Peter, you are the founder of a company that helps CEOs build and scale their product development functions. Crafting and implementing a good vision and strategy can be the single most important thing that a company does. And that said, not many people ask this question because I think everybody sort of feels like they know the answer already, or they might even be too afraid to ask and seem silly. But what is a vision and strategy, and who is responsible for it?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, thank you guys for having me on. It's a great pleasure. And as we are dealing with this question quite a lot, I think a lot of companies are missing either of those things, like either vision or strategy more often. How I see these two, I think that vision is this like a bright spot on the horizon where the company should aim for or is trying to chase. And I always like to think of some great vision statements I saw in the past. And one of those is one from Southwest Airlines, I guess. And it's like that they would like to be the world's most loved, most efficient, and most profitable airline. And this is exactly what helps them to like guide all their actions. And the strategy in itself is just a path on the road, or just a path to get to that vision. And it's not like written in the stone. It's just a path we know about at that moment we need to take, and it's usually changing a lot. And what I see is that usually it's like in full competence of CEO, or CEO is usually responsible for setting up a vision for the company. And of course, strategy is usually built on top of knowledge of multiple people. When the company is smaller, you have less people speaking or talking about the strategy. Whereas for bigger companies, it's usually C-suite who are responsible for setting up strategy for a particular company.
So something that's a little bit more collaborative at larger companies. And when do you think a company should create a vision and strategy? When should they put that in place? And you mentioned that it's strategy is something that changes. I imagine the change cycle is different based on the size of the company. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about when you think a vision and strategy should be put in place and how frequently that should be adjusted?
I mean, every company should start with a vision, right? It's something you need to have in mind just in order to be able to start the company or start this like business endeavor. And I think that at some point, strategy makes sense when you have more people on board. So basically, when you are solo operator, you don't need to have like anything elaborate, but still you want to look into that bright spot and think about your actions and your activities you do from the perspective of, are they adding value to that like future vision, or is just something I'm spending time on and it's not that interesting. On the other hand, when you grow bigger, I think you should have definitely strategy in place, and because it helps people to go together, to get together and basically follow that path and do the right stuff in the right order, talking with their, for example, team members in the right way, so that they don't do stuff which is not necessary. They don't waste time on things which won't be used in the future, stuff like that. So I think for every company, this moment when the strategy is built or strategy is created, it's different. But I think they should definitely think of their strengths and build on top of them. And to the second part of your question, when to update it, I feel that updating the strategy is an ongoing effort, and it should be done at least once in a quarter, and basically asking themselves, whomever is working on the strategy, asking themselves, hey, what has changed in the environment we are in, and what do we need to do to adjust to that strategy? So, for example, when in 2020 COVID hits, it was a big blow to a lot of companies, and they needed
Right.
to adjust their strategy. So, yeah, definitely something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And something that you said really stuck out to me, which is strategy isn't really just about what you're going to do, it's also what you're not going to do, which I see a lot of companies struggle with right now as we're in this much more anxious environment, right? Like we're not seeing as much VC cash. Um, because of that, we're seeing the C-suite sort of feel a lot of fear and anxiety. And what I think we see is the strategy turns into a list of things to do because people usually turn to what can I control my controllables, which is outputs, which is we're going to do a lot of things and see what works rather than, as you put it, sort of like maintaining that heading and that focus, to be very clear for not only yourself, but your team on here is what we're going to do for the next quarter or 6 months or year. And here's, it very clearly what we're not going to do. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and if I can comment on this one, I really like to think about strategy as really like a path through a forest where you can take like different smaller paths and you
Right.
still go to the same direct destination. But what you mentioned, I would like sign up for that in a way that when you have this like overarching goal or vision for the company, every no you say to things which are not aligned with that direction, it's yes to something else which is aligned to that
Right.
direction. So it's exactly the opposite. I worked with many people who thought that, hey, we need to put more on the roadmap, but at some point you see that those things were just distractors and it's not helping the company move in the right direction. So completely agree.
Peter, the vision and strategy, it's created by the CEO, typically at earlier stage companies. When is it that you feel like it should be transferred over to somebody else, and who should that be? Should it be split between the vision and the strategy in different places, the same person? Is it the product manager? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I see it in multiple levels, even. I would say there should, like, ultimately for the vision, the CEO is responsible for the vision for the company, and it's his or her role to set it for folks to follow and to actually inspire by that vision. It's a very important part of it. On, let's say, strategy level, I see it different levels, as I said. And the first one is I always ask, like, whomever is in charge, like C-suite or like management team, what is the business vision or what is the business strategy? Sorry, because there's quite often there is a big difference between product strategy and business strategy, and very often senior leaders are asking people from product, hey, give us like the product strategy, but they have nothing to connect that product strategy to. So I'm always asking, hey, give us like a business strategy which is more broad and it takes into account other other functions in the company like sales or marketing or other people, and the management team should know which direction they want to take based on these like skills or experiences they have from the past. But then when you have this like overall strategy or direction, I think it's a great exercise for a product leader to distill it into features, for example, which will be built into the software if we are talking about software companies, and which will actually support this business strategy of the company. Because very often we see that, for example, the business strategy is, hey, let's go with I don't know, partners, but there is no support for partners in the software itself. So it's very difficult to bring this business strategy to life because there is no support from the product itself. So that would, I think, and the handover itself from the CEO to whomever on that level, it's pretty straightforward. When the company grows, you need to give away some of your duties. And for example, product strategy is one of the things which can be definitely handed over to a product leader.
With product managers, they often feel like they're in control of that product strategy. When in doing so, they look at certain metrics and KPIs like utilization, adoption, and things like that to help them understand the success of what they're doing. What are some other metrics or things that the product manager should be looking at? What other things should be important to them?
And it's really great point, which I keep thinking about in like a lot. And it's because a lot of product managers I know, if they have metrics in place, these are usually product related metrics, as you mentioned. And those are very rarely connected to actual like business KPIs or any higher level metrics, which basically mean the product is making difference in how the company is doing. So what I tend to suggest is to really focus on connection of those product metrics to something much higher. And when I'm talking of this higher level, pretty much I see like the success of the company in terms of financial metrics. It's a function of revenue. Either you like make revenue or you preserve revenue, or you make it more sustainable. And from that perspective, you can always find connection between making revenue or preserving it to some of the metrics you have on the product level. And so regardless of how many metrics you track at the moment, you should definitely go and check if they support your overall business KPIs and how they actually support these like business teams, if I can tell, or I can put it like this. And this is something I didn't see that much in the past or when I'm working with companies. So that would be definitely a great way how to improve what the products are doing, because connecting it to revenue in some way would definitely help to understand if that particular feature or particular change is making any difference or not.
Excellent. How often should they be looking at revenue or metrics like that pertain to the business health?
That's an interesting question. I think that like all those business KPIs are like lagging indicators. It takes quite a lot of time before they actually change. So from my perspective, you need to have some of those more like direct metrics, like churn, for example, or app downloads, app installs, or any other activation points. For example, if you are looking for if you already managed the product market fit. And in that matter, I think you should be looking at them on this like lower level, you should be looking at them quite often. I think it depends on the metric itself, but it varies like from weeks to months, but not more. And what I suggest usually is using cohorts for this, because what can change is like the external forces. And for example, different marketing campaigns can have different impact on what happened in whatever your product metric. And then you need to understand, or you can understand better if you split it into cohorts and look at different parameters of their cohorts as well.
So
I totally agree with you, Peter. I think the figuring out that correlation between a product metric and a business or financial metric is the key, right? And I'm sure you've seen this. A lot of product teams just start measuring everything rather than taking a couple of KPIs or metrics and saying, does this have a positive correlation with retention? Right? And some of the most successful companies I've been at have selected maybe one metric that they're like, this is the single, thing that we see in the product. It's an engagement metric that equals retention. I'll give you an example. I worked at a company that was a freelance management software. The one number that we really consistently looked at, of course, we looked at, things like incident rates, bug rate, all those sort of KPIs as well. But the main thing that we looked at is how much our customers were spending through the platform, right? And I wasn't on the product team at the time. I was on the customer success team, but that's what I looked at, right? If my customers were suddenly spending less money through the platform, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get them on the phone right now, or we have to have a QBR to understand what they were doing. And same with product, right? That's what they were looking at. Hey, are our customers, paying their freelancers more or less, right? And that was a very clear, correlational metric for product to look at, that showed, we're going to retain this customer or not. Of course, there are some customers that had a little bit more seasonal work, but by and large, that was the best indicator. So I think the state that we're at right now, if you look back 5 or 10 years ago, product and engineering teams were sort of like left on their own, and I'll even dare to say like not as accountable as they are held today. So I always describe it as a little bit coming from the go-to-market side and moving into product. I'm like, it sort of felt like a little bit of arts and crafts happening where, sales teams and CSM teams, it's like, if you're not meeting your sales targets or your retention targets, you're out, right? And I'm like, what is product getting measured on, And now more than ever, we're seeing product and engineering sort of be held very much accountable of what is the ROI that you are delivering to the team. And I see a lot of product and engineering leaders and ICs, right, struggle with this. And I think that's the reason why we see chief product officers and chief technology officers have the shortest tenure of anybody in the C-suite. I'm not saying that's the only factor, but I would say that is a big part of it. So that being said, being that they have the shortest tenures, where do you see the most significant misalignment between CEO founders and their product leaders, right? Is it in this, they're unable to tell you their ROI? Is it something else? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I will quickly touch on what you just said because it struck me. It's very interesting. I've seen a number of teams which had like metrics in place or were thinking about implementing metrics for their products. And what they did was like a quick search on the internet before AI era or even like ChatGPT, hey, what are the great product metrics? And they will just implement them like across the board without thinking if that makes sense for them at all. And you see like blog articles from HubSpot or other folks, which is very great work. And they will tell you like, hey, this is the list of 25 product metrics you should definitely have in your product. And for me, it's a shortcut for not thinking enough about what these metrics are telling you about your particular product. And this is the biggest issue I see, that like when you see all those like metrics implemented, you rarely see people were really thinking about how to use them, how to correlate them to those financial indicators and stuff like that. So I think, and it doesn't reply to your question, I will get to it later or in a second, but I think people, and especially product leaders, they need to think about like metrics and about the way how their software is used or how the product is used, and only implement those metrics which make sense and show something over short or long term. It doesn't matter, but like having just dashboards full of metrics is like you won't be using them in after all. That's the experience. So I would definitely say be more focused on what you measure and how it connects to your business indicators, rather than measure everything and then make sense out of it, because it never happens.
Right.
That's one thing. And to answer your question about the misalignment between product leaders or CPOs and senior management or CEOs, I think there are two like different facets of it, or flavors. The first one is if the CEO is actually from numbers background, I would say like from finance or audit or something like that.
Right.
They usually allow product leaders to be very autonomous from the get-go, because they don't have that expertise, and they are looking for something or someone who can complement their abilities, their skills, and it's much better combination. If you have someone in the CEO level or role who is from the like product or tech background, it's much more difficult for those folks like CPOs to prove themselves that they are right with their approach, and it's much more complicated. I've seen it over and over again. And so this might be one of the things which leads to like shorter tenures. But also I think like misalignment in values, like why that particular person came into that company and how are they moving forward together. It's different, and then there's a lot of like misalignments or roles end, because you get like head on head with someone who has a strong opinion on product, who doesn't support you, and it's very difficult to prove your point. So I think these two are the most common I've seen around, but there might be others as well.
No, I think those are fantastic examples of the reasons that we see that consistent misalignment. And that said, right, it's important, of course, for the product leaders and their CEO founder to align. And I think probably the second most important thing is product leaders making sure that they are aligned with their teams. So how can product leaders ensure their teams are building towards that vision and strategy? And how do you think they could be more proactive rather than reactive, right? In their approach.
I think, like we spoke about it a little bit earlier, I think it all goes back to that business strategy and like actually clarity of what that strategy means. And I've seen a lot of examples where the strategy wasn't even existent, wasn't written anywhere, and people were not able to connect their own work with particular business strategy or something. And so if I would come to a company, first thing I would do, I would definitely ask for a business strategy. And I would need this input for me and my team as well, to be able to basically work on things which are meaningful for the company, for its vision, and to fulfill that strategy. Without that strategy, we cannot move an inch forward. So that would be one of the things I will need. And the second one is you need to be able to connect the dots. So basically, the day-to-day work of developers or your product managers who are working with developers, you need to be able to split that business strategy into chunks or into smaller pieces, which actually make up the day of a developer or product manager. And you need to be able to measure that output. So I tend to say we need to produce like product roadmaps which are related to, I don't know, whatever like planning system you use, whether it's OKR or something like that. You need to be able to produce a roadmap for a product which is very, very tightly related to the business roadmap or OKRs. And then you cannot do it on your own. You need to have a strong team. So in a role of a product leader, I would definitely invest into like education and like career growth of my product managers or people on the product team, because definitely to be able to fulfill this kind of overarching goal of creating products which fulfill the business strategy, you need to have people who are capable of doing that. And without proper skill set, without proper experiences, you will not do that, or you will not achieve that. So these are like two things, really, like clarity and then empowering your team and enabling them to learn even through like smaller like failures, which are quick but not that expensive, and really make sure that your team is full of like A players who are aligned with values of the company, as we spoke about in the previous question.
When you work for a company that's gone from an early startup phase to like a later stage, and they're starting to invest in bringing in a product manager or bringing in other leaders to help support some of the work that they were previously doing on their own, founders typically have, I would say, pretty fixed mindset on what they believe that product should be doing. And they have a vision that they've shared with everybody. But if you were to be coming in at any given point to that company, how would you navigate that relationship and make sure that you're aligning with the founders and the C-suite leaders between what that product strategy should look like and how it fits into the overall vision?
Yeah, so what I personally like, I usually work with like CEOs of companies which are growing, less often with founders who are just like hit product market fit. But what applies to both of those groups, I think they need to understand that there is something missing in their, I don't know, like product culture or product team. And there is something like, for example, problems with deliveries. The deadlines are always missed. They are producing features which are not related to what customers are asking for. There is misalignment between sales and product folks, or customer success. There are different views on it. So usually what we do, we start with a workshop and we try to identify as many pain points in this whole like chain from the C-level, from the management suite down to product managers. And usually we run this workshop with the whole product team plus CEO, or like the other leaders who are related to work of the product team, as I mentioned, sales, support, marketing. And when we run this workshop, we usually get a lot of different opinions and views on those issues which are in the company. And then we usually produce a report for the CEO, which says, hey, we found out this, let's say, spots which can be improved, and we can help you with it. or the report is actionable in itself. So they can take it from us and basically start doing the changes as they see the fit for themselves. And I think to really align on that mindset, we are not going to change how they do their business. We are usually working on clarification of that company vision or business strategy so that the product understands what they need to do and they can produce like more like better outputs, better features, and all these kind of outputs.
When a CEO is laying that foundation for good business, what are some of the key foundational things that they should be focusing on, especially when it's related to vision and strategy?
Yeah, so I mentioned it at the beginning, like basically at some point you need to have a vision for that company. What do you want to achieve? Why did you build it? And I see it very simply, like that vision comes from probably a pain point for a particular customer. So basically what I would say, to be able to, as you said, like lay down a good foundation for the company, you need to be aware of who is your customer, what is their like number one, number two, number three problem, and you need to be able to find a solution to that problem. So basically, this is very easy. Based on these like three elements, you can then start thinking about what is the great or what is the best channel, how you can approach those customers, what is, for example, the great go-to-market strategy. And all of this should be definitely based on your strengths. Either if you are a single founder or there are like multiple people on the company already, you need to make sure that you leverage strengths you have. And basically, when you have all these things together, we'll just sit down and elaborate on how to put it together that you can follow it in a year, in a quarter, and revise as we discussed before. So this is, I would say, the easiest way how to do it. Really think of your customer, his pain point, and the solution you can provide, and build on your strengths. That would be my suggestion.
Totally. And I mean, I think right in line with that, how do you think, you work with a ton of CEOs, you've mentioned there's sort of different behaviors that you see in, first-time founders, multi-time founders, and so on and so forth. How do you think CEOs and founders can free themselves up and leverage their leaders to run a successful business?
Yeah, I mean, like this is what we are working on usually with founders and CEOs who are very deeply involved in product, for example, because usually when you have a founder of a startup, they are usually to some degree involved in the product development, that's for sure. And then at some point they need to hand it over to someone else. And I like the term key person of influence from Daniel Priestley, the guy who's running like multi-million-dollar businesses. And I kind of like that approach that the CEO or a founder shouldn't be focused on the like lowest bits of the product development. They should be there to really spread the word about the company, make sure that the number of people who know the company is actually growing, and they should go to events and bring attention to that company. And in order to do that, they need to have a system in place and to really empower those leaders in all the positions, including product, to be able to operate autonomously without the need to ask for every single thing from like the CEO. Because until that happens and they are basically able to leave the company for like longer periods of time, they will still be like the weakest point in the chain, I would say. So they need to make sure that they are able to let go some of their responsibilities and put in place systems which will allow them to see it very quickly, for example, on dashboard or any other like tool that the company is doing well. And if there is something needed to tweak, they can jump in quickly and do it, but they don't need to be involved in day-to-day operations. This is the most critical, I guess.
I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, we spend a lot of time. Darren is as well as a head of RevOps, right? Like pushing leaders to focus and say, pick what are the 3 to 4 numbers that matter, okay? And just have a simple dashboard. Darren and I built this out at a past company together of like green, yellow, red. And when things are red, right, that's where you could dive in. But you do not need to be in every single meeting about every single initiative that's going on, right? It's like you need to basically have like it's like when you go to the airport and you have like the plane is on time, it's delayed or not, right? I'm not gonna go to every single spot at the airport and check everything that's on time. I'm just gonna go ahead and check anything that says delayed or canceled, right? And swoop in there so I could focus my energy. So I think that's a great point. And again, it's not only for the health of their company and future scalability, right? Because you can't scale as a single person. It's also about your own health as a CEO founder and keeping your sanity so you're not blocked up for your entire day, right? And you're laser focused on the most important things. So
yeah, I wanted to mention like that. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. That I like to have dashboards which are full of those like red, amber, and green lights, and you just focus on things which are red or amber for a longer periods of time, and it helps really to focus that meeting on the problems. And I usually teach people in the companies how to use this and how to turn their like normal agenda like for the meeting into looking into dashboards and into these like colors, and it's very effective. And we usually combine it with a couple of meetings which are happening regularly, and people are usually very hesitant to say, well, we don't want more meetings and on regular basis, but then they learn that if there are like right meetings with right agenda with right, let's say, dashboard support or anything like that, they will save a lot of time over like ad hoc meetings which are just issue solving. Because for example, we have a meeting called weekly check-in in every company we work with, and it's on a C-level or management level, and they get together for 30 minutes, an hour max, and they only discuss problems which are happening across the company and they need focus from the management team. And it's similar to like agile stand-up or daily or how you call it, but on the management level, and they can unblock things so quickly. And you know that the latest next Wednesday, for example, you have the whole management suite in one meeting, and you can unblock things which are really like very problematic otherwise, because you cannot get your ad hoc meeting on an agenda of every single management team member easily. So yeah, I completely agree.
I like that framework. One of the things that I do is, I block out my calendar on a Monday. I block out every available time for me to work. So I have like no free time after the week starts. I do that intentionally to block ad hoc meetings because they become just expansive. Like they just continue to come throughout the week, and then that pulls away from the productivity of your team and being able to execute on things that actually drive value in the business, right?
Yeah.
And instead, they're driving value in somebody else's part of the business, and you're not actually driving your roadmap. Yeah, with that, it's taken some adjustment to making sure some of those things are there, but you do need those weekly meetings, the weekly touch points with a greater team. just to be able to unblock those things and give people an outlet, right? And so I really love the idea of, having one of those meetings with the right people, at least once a week at minimum, to be able to go in and address all these things in one fell swoop rather than having a bunch of ad hoc meetings. I think that's very insightful. When you look at the aligning with the CEO, and as you're looking to hire someone, so you don't have to be in all those meetings, and you can really trust somebody to do their work. What is it you look for when you're hiring somebody to make sure you have somebody that you feel comfortable not being in those meetings?
It all goes down to a culture in the company. And what I found, like me personally, when I work with someone, I'm looking for like personality traits which are complementary to mine. So I'm not looking for friends, pretty much. It's very easy to hire friends. Like you are very, I don't know, like it's very easy or easygoing with someone. You see it for the first time and you tend to hire those people. I usually say, well, you are not hiring for friendship to the company, you are hiring for skills, and you need to complement your skills or find complementary skills to your, for example, the management team. I also say, and I don't know where I got it, it's quite old, but like you should aim for hiring A players, because once you get like B player, they tend to hire C players, and then you are in downward spiral that they will only, like, you will never get A player again, because B ones are usually very stressful about their position and role, and they will hire rather like lower quality folks than someone who is above in skills because they are afraid of their role. And yeah, so I would definitely focus on values, on the company, on company culture, if that person fits or not. And of course, like the skill set for the role is very important, but you can check it very easily today. Like there are different ways, behavioral interviews and stuff like that. You can quickly check the background of the person with social networks everywhere. You can do it easily. So I think I would focus more on like the personality traits and if they complement your team, rather than like being very, rather than hiring for friendship. And just the biggest, I remembered one thing, the biggest issue I see is just hiring like the best from otherwise bad ones. Like you are in a hurry to hire for a position and you have like 4 candidates. Either of them is not like very good, but you need to fill that position because, I don't know, like budget is going away or something like that. I would be very cautious about this because it happens all the time. And this is exactly the way how B players are getting into companies and start that downward spiral I mentioned earlier.
Well, thanks for talking with us today, Peter. Really appreciate you taking the time.
It was a pleasure for me as well, guys. Thank you very much again, and see you in the future.